Hey guys, and welcome back to the Matthew 5:14 podcast. I'm so glad that you guys are here. If you are new here, I am your host, Carter Furrow. And if you are not new here and you've watched previous podcasts, actually watched them, you can see that I'm in a different place. I am currently in my dorm room versus being back home. I used to actually film in the guest room at my house, and that's where I had the Be the Light sheet. It was a sheet behind me that I had painted, and it's still over here. Here, I'll flip the camera or move it over. It's over there on the wall, but I thought this was prettier. This is my bed, and it has, yellow on it, so it's still, light and happy. So I'm in my new setup, and I am getting to film the first podcast. I'm not going to lie, it's definitely tough, balancing school and the podcast, but I know that this is still something that I feel very called to do. It's something that I still really want to do. It might look a little different moving forward, and I'm, surrendered to whatever it's going to look like, but my goal is to keep up with it and stay on top of it, even if maybe sometimes I post a day later or something like that. But my goal is to still get good, godly content out there that can encourage you guys to go out and be the light in the world around you. So in today's podcast, I want to talk about Valentine's Day, but I want to talk about the Christian point of view of it, because I think that it is, so culturized now. It is such a big thing in our world that we've actually forgotten the meaning behind it. So I thought the best way to do research and figure out how to get this podcast shaped was to do search of what is Valentine's Day? What is the origin of it? Because just like when I did the podcast on acts of random kindness, I think it was very easy, for me to just fall into mindset, I know what kindness is. I know what acts of random kindness is. But then once I searched it up, I was actually blown away by, wait, I've never thought about stuff like this before, and was able to find so much truth and value in that. So I thought, there's probably things wrapped around Valentine's Day that I don't even know, because I've just grown up, believing whatever my family taught me about it, the world. And I believe that there's nuggets of truth in it that God could show me. So that's exactly what I did. And like always, God showed up. He never disappoints. And he blew my mind with something that was really cool. So Valentine's Day is in celebration. It was built or founded in celebration in honor of Saint Valentine. And Valentine was actually a martyr for faith. That means he died because of his faith in Jesus. And so they created Valentine's Day. It was originally a Christian feast to celebrate and honor what he had done for the kingdom of heaven, and that was to give his life up for Christ. And when I read that, I was just in awe, because it dawned on me that, if you're a martyr and you die for your faith, that means you're living a selfless, sacrificial life for the kingdom of God. And that is the way that we're called to love, because God's love towards us is selfless and sacrificial. And so it really dawned on me that we need to be living out every day, not just Valentine's Day, every day and Valentine's Day, in a sacrificial, selfless way of love. And I think our world nowadays with Valentine's Day, it's all about just any love, earthly love. It's going out to cute dinner. It's, giving teddy bears away and chocolate and stuff like that. And while there's nothing wrong with that, there is so much more to it. And so I really want to dive into, what does love actually look like? And how do we live that selfless, sacrificial love out? But if you take away anything from this message, the first thing that I really want to point out is that love is about selflessness and sacrifice. And our world gets that so wrong. So this year on Valentine's Day, let's remember the true meaning of love. So in order to understand the true meaning of love, we have to look at the Bible, because the Bible is all about love. It's a message of love. It's a message of God, and God is love. So I'm going to go to the classic Bible verse on love, which is 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7. And some of you guys, might be sighing or, of course she's going to use that one. But we have to read it in order to know what love is all about. So it says, love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. And while so many of us may, hear that Bible verse and may know that Bible verse, how many of us are actually living it out? How many of us on a day-to-day basis are actually following what it says? How many of us are, choosing to be humble instead of boastful? How many of us are choosing to just, keep our mouth shut instead of being prideful? How many of us are choosing to walk in the way of the word and actually walk righteously versus saying yes to our flesh? How many of us are actually forgiving one another versus holding grudges? How many of us are actually living that out? And so I think it's so important for us to read that, not just, reading it to check the box or reading it because we have to, but reading it with eyes open to see how we can live it out in our own lives and grow in our own lives. And so I really want to point out a couple of things. Patience looks like when that car cuts you off in traffic, you're not flipping them off. You're not calling them mean names. If even a mean thought comes into your mind, you're rebuking it and you're not thinking about it. You're being patient and you're letting it go because it's not that big of a deal. Patience looks like when you're waiting on that person who is always late. I know for me, my sister, she is always late. I love her. But I remember when we were in high school, I would always be on time. I'd be ready to go. And she would always be running behind. I would go get the car started. I would make her breakfast. She would still be running behind. And we would get to school late. And it would always annoy me. And there were times where I wasn't always nice with her. I wasn't patient. I would get impatient. I would say mean things. I would rush her. And that's not how we're supposed to be. Be patient. Bear with one another's sins. Obviously, running late isn't, probably a sin, but the message is still the same. Have patience. Don't get mad at them. Don't call them mean names. Don't try to rush them, force them. Be patient. Kindness. Be thoughtful. Think of others as greater than yourself. Go out of your way to love and support them. A friend tells you one day that they're not feeling good. That next day or a couple of days after, check on them. Something that they're going through and it's, hard and tough. Send them a word of encouragement or, put together a little care basket for them. Or sometimes being thoughtful and kind is just choosing to sit and listen. Sometimes it's not words or action. It's action through silence. It's action through listening and just being there for them and allowing them to talk through what they're going through. Walking in, because it says, love, it does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Okay, that means, are you walking in the truth of what Scripture says? Are you walking in purity? Are you stuck in drunkenness, or are you living out the freedom of Christ? Are you stuck in sexual immorality, or are you living out the freedom of Christ? Are you stuck in jealousy or comparison, or are you living in the freedom of Christ? Living in the freedom of Christ means you're living out the truth and the goodness, and you're walking in purity. You're not stuck in partying or drinking. You are happy for others. You're celebrating others. You're confident in who God is calling you to be. You're content and satisfied in the season of life that He has you in, and out of that overflow and abundance, you're able to encourage others to do the same, and you're inspiring others in the way that you love. And so those are just a couple of little examples, and I could go on and on and on. But are you actually living out that selfless, sacrificial love that Saint Valentine, the martyr, did for, his fellow believers, what he did for Jesus, and what Valentine's Day is all about? Are you living out that love? And I just want to encourage you to do it. And remember, you're not going to be perfect at it. There was only one person who was perfect and only one person who will ever be perfect, and that is Jesus. I fail at this and I mess up with it. Like I said, my sister and I still struggle with this I still struggle with that to this day, of not always being patient and bearing with her and letting it go. Sometimes I still get mad and I don't always say the nicest things. Sometimes people cut me off in traffic and I think some not so nice thoughts. Sometimes, I, instead of responding in love and truth, I yell or I get mad, and that's not okay. And I shouldn't do that. But the hope that I have is found in Jesus. And I know that through Him and with Him, I can constantly look more like Him and seek to be more like Him and live my life, selflessly and sacrificially. So you don't have to be perfect. You're not called to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect, but seek to be more like Jesus. That means you're seeking to be like perfection, but you never will be perfect. But seek to be more like Jesus and seek to live out His sacrificial love. And so that's a little bit, what love looks like, what the Bible calls us to love. But I also just want to point out some scripture on who is love, and that is Jesus. And so if we want to love, then we have to look at the one who is love. And so in Romans 5:8, it says, but God shows his love for us because while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. So St. Valentine, he gave up his life for fellow believers, but the ultimate example of sacrificial love is Jesus. He gave up his life so that we may find ours. He took on the penalty of our sin so that we may find freedom over our sin. He is the ultimate perfect example of sacrificial selfless love. So we shouldn't, worship St. Valentine. We should worship Jesus and see him as the one who is perfect in love, and seek to worship and honor him and glorify him, on Valentine's Day, but on any day by living out his sacrificial selfless love. Second Bible verse I have, basic go-to once again, but I really want us to read it slowly but surely and really pull out the truth in it, is John 3:16. I know that's a classic. It's like everybody has it in their bios on Instagram. They got it tattooed on their arms. They got it as a bumper sticker on their car. It's highlighted in their Bibles. It's hung up in their house. But how many of us are actually living like it's true? So John 3:16 says, God so loved the world that he gave his only son so that everyone who believes in him won't perish but have eternal life. And so once again, we see God's love that was shown to us was through sacrifice. It was through being selfless. So that means if we want to live like him and worship that God that, we talk about in that go-to Bible verse, John 3:16, then we have to live in that sacrificial selfless love and be willing to give it up. Maybe it looks like giving up a parking place to somebody else, just because why not? Maybe it looks like giving up your, order in a line to let somebody else go before you. This weekend, for example, I actually joined the equestrian team here at my college. And so I was out of town for a meet, and there were 4 girls in each room. And so that means we all had to take turns taking showers. Well, I chose to go last in my shower. Not like I am not saying that I am better in any way because of that or like boasting about it. But what I'm saying is, it could look like that. That also, I did benefit from that. Now, we shouldn't be sacrificial or selfless out of benefit, but I was able to benefit from that because I was able to spend time with Jesus before while they were all in the shower. And then I felt like I didn't have to rush, which was nice, but that was not my heart intention or motive. It was to put them above myself. Maybe selflessness and sacrifice is, you see a homeless person on the side of the street. Give them that $1 that's in your console or $5 that's in your wallet. Selfless love could look like, you get to a place in the store and you're looking at something and you go to grab it. There's one thing left and somebody else is there too and they want to give it to them. Maybe it looks like a book that this is something that I struggle with. A book I really, really like. And I know that somebody else could benefit from it if I give it to them, but I don't want to let go of it because it's my book and I like it. Give it up. That actually made me think of a Bible verse that I didn't plan on talking about, but I want to pull it up because I think it's really good. So this is like talking about revenge, but I think, it can be a little different. So it says, but I say, so this is Matthew 5:39. It says, but I say, do not resist an evil person. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, offer the other cheek also. If you're sued in court and your shirt is taken from you, give your coat too. If a soldier demands that you carry his gear for a mile, carry it 2 miles. Give to those who ask and don't turn away from those who want to borrow. So it's saying like, give to those, be selfless, be sacrificial. And this is so funny because this is also in Matthew. I literally read this today. It's talking about money and possessions. And it says, don't store up. So this is Matthew 6:19. Don't store up treasures here on earth where moths eat them and rust destroys them and where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven where moths and rust cannot destroy and thieves do not break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be. And so when we give that selfless love away, when we give away, when we sacrifice, when we give to others and we think of others greater than ourselves, one, we're reflecting where our treasure actually is, and that's in heaven. When we do that, we are building up treasure in heaven versus if we hold on to that book, or we hold on to that money, or we hold on to that spot in line, or whatever it is that you're holding on to. That's where our treasure is going to be, and we don't want our treasure to be in that because that's fleeting. That's going to go away. Moths, break into it. Rust destroys it. Or moths eat it, and rust destroys it, and thieves break into it. So when you're selfless and you're sacrificial, one, you're able to be the light because you're showing where your treasure also is, and two, you're getting to build up treasure in heaven. And so Jesus lived out sacrificial, selfless love. We're called to live it out. Give to others. Think of others greater than yourselves. Build up your treasure in heaven and be the light by doing so. But also don't do it for that motive. Do it because that's what God's calling you to do, but also do it because you want to. And if you don't have the desire, pray for the desire because God will surely give it to you. So then the last Bible verse that I really want to focus on about God's love is 1 John 4:19, which says, we love because he first loved us. So as we go out into the world, as we go out into life, in order to love people the right way, we got to do it with God. In order to, love people in your church group, in order to love people in your classes, in order to love your coworkers, love your parents, love your friends, love your family, you got to love them through Christ. Now, obviously, we could love without God, but it's going to be an imperfect form of love. It's going to be a selfish, not selfless form of love. And so I really want to remind you that in order to love people well, not just on Valentine's Day, but on any day, you need God's love. And his love is perfect. It's awesome. And it is amazing. And through his love, St. Valentine, the martyr, the one that we're celebrating, or that Valentine's Day all got started about, he was able to live that selfish, sacrificial love through God's love. So this Valentine's Day, take time to focus and reflect on God's great love for you, and take time to focus and reflect on how you want to go and share that love through others through being selfless, sacrificial, living out what 1 Corinthians 13:4-7 says, and just being all propelled by, these Bible verses I just read about God's great love for you. And remember, God wants you to love him, not just for what he can do for you, but also just for who he is. And I know this is something that I actually struggle with, and I actually prayed against this today that, obviously we should love what God does for us because he willingly does it. And there's nothing wrong with loving it and being grateful for him. But if that is, the only thing that we love him for, that's so wrong. We need to love him just for who he is. And so pray that God would grow your heart to love him for who he is, not just for what he does. So that's a little bit of some Valentine's Day encouragement when it comes to, what is love? How do we live it out? God's love for us. But now I kind of want to go into a couple little categories about, relationship status, because I think that is a very big thing that a lot of people realize and a lot of people recognize on Valentine's Day. It's if you're single, if you're dating, if you're engaged, if you're married. And I just want to shine some light onto that. So the first point is singleness. So many Christians, and not Christians, Christians and people, but just so many people in general complain about being single on Valentine's Day. I've fallen into that trap because we feel because I'm single, so I'm in that boat with you. If you're single too, we feel like we're less than on Valentine's Day because we don't have a significant other to love. And this is such a lie from the enemy. Because if Valentine's Day in love is all about God's love, and, a martyr, St. Valentine, who was led by God's love, if it's all about God's love, then we can be reminded God was single. He loved us perfectly and he wasn't in a relationship. And his love was perfect and he wasn't in a relationship. So that's a reminder to us that the one who is love wasn't in a relationship and his love was perfect. Then it's a reminder to us that our love can be beautiful and good and strong, and we can share with others even if we're single. We're not less than or lacking. And obviously, if you're in a relationship, there's nothing wrong with that. That is a gift from God as well. But what I'm saying, speaking to the single folks out there, you're not less than just because you may be single. Another thing that I want to point out is St. Valentine was, during his era, he was a Roman priest, and so most likely he was Catholic. I tried to do research, but it's kind of there just wasn't much out there. But most likely, because Catholic priests, they don't get married. They commit to a life of celibacy, so they just commit to a life of, refraining from sex, even in the confinements of marriage. They just, they don't get married, they don't have sex, they don't do any of that. And so most likely he was single. So if the one that Valentine's Day is about, Saint Valentine, if it was a feast to honor him and he was single, then it's kind of a reminder that Valentine's Day isn't, just centered around romantic relationships like we think. It's simply centered around perfect love, God's love, sacrificial, selfless love. So once again, you are not less than in this season. And even the roots and origin of Valentine's Day is not about romantic love. It's about selfless, brotherly love. And so with that being said, you can still love people and make the most of this day, even if you're single. Use it as a time to reach out to your family members, reach out to your friends, do kind things for others. Use the day for goodness. Don't just, twiddle your thumbs and be like, well, maybe next year I'll have, a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Maybe next year I'll be in a relationship. Maybe next year I'll go on a cute date. No. Make the most of the day. Go out and love and serve other people through sacrificial love, and make it a good day. So you're not less than in the season. Use it for good and make the most of it. And remember, you're not alone. And I'm sharing these words and I'm single too. And last year I was in a relationship and it was fun because I, had a, dinner night with my boyfriend or boyfriend at the time. And, we exchanged fun gifts with each other and that was fun. And I enjoyed that. But now this year as I'm single, I know that I'm not less than just because I may not have that. And I'm thankful because now I'm in a season of my life where I'm fully focused on God. I don't have, a distraction of a relationship. And I'm in a way healthier place in my life than I was before. And so realize that this season and this time, you get to be fully focused on God's love, fully focused on loving others without the distraction of a relationship. So rejoice in it, be glad in it, be thankful for it, and realize that you're not less than. Second thing I want to highlight on is dating. And that is something I think that gets a little tricky with Valentine's Day. I think it's very easy for people to fall into sexual sin on Valentine's Day. I think a lot of people, it's easy for them to see it as a cheat day or whatever. They're like, oh, it's Valentine's Day, you have to, blah, 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 blah. I think it's also very easy for one-night stands to happen and, hookups. We live in a really big hookup culture where it's super normal to just have sex with somebody that you don't know and you never talk to them again. And people see it as just meeting their needs. And that is not the way that God is calling us to live. And when we do that, we're actually selling ourselves short from the life that God has for us. And so I want to remind you guys, if you're in a relationship and you're dating somebody, Valentine's Day is not a cheat day. It's not a free pass to do whatever you want or to fall into sexual sin. And it's also not a day, if you are single, to excuse yourself to sexual sin with just anybody in one night stands. And I know that can be a hard pill to swallow because we have fleshly desires and they are strong, but with Jesus, our flesh can be weakened and our spirit can become so much stronger. So this Valentine's Day, in these days, because this podcast is going to come out like a week before Valentine's Day, pray to God that he would strengthen your spirit to be able to say no to your flesh and to be able to say no to those desires that are not from him. And so I just want to highlight on a couple Bible verses. 1 Corinthians 6:18 says, flee from sexual immorality. Every other sin a person commits is outside the body, but the sexual immoral person sins against his own body. And then I think this is Proverbs. Hold up, let me double check. I don't have the actual book of the Bible that it is from. Yep. Okay, so it's Proverbs 5:15-17, and I love this one. I thought it was so good because I think it hits on not having sex while you're dating somebody, but also not having sex just with anybody if you're a one-night stand. And it says, or even, I also want to add on the point, some people just have like hookup buddies or a friend that they hook up with. They're not a stranger, but they're also not dating them. That's not the way that God has for you either. And one time I had a friend who said this, which I thought was so good, and she said, because, part of my testimony, I did not walk in purity. And I'm going to hit on that in a minute too, if you have fallen into sexual sin. But she said how, when we have sex outside of marriage, we're not experiencing sex, we're experiencing sin. Beautiful sex is only experienced within the confinements of marriage because God created sex. Like, God desires it for us, but he desires it for us in the form of marriage because sex is a gift from him in a way to worship him, but only through the confinements of marriage. And so we have to remember that it is not something that we're meant to have outside of marriage because otherwise it's sin. It's not in its true form of beauty. And And so in Proverbs 5:15-17, it says, drink water from your own well. Share your love only with your wife. Why spill the water of your springs in the streets, having sex with just anyone? You should reserve it for yourselves. Never share it with strangers. Isn't that insane? Like, it's literally, the Bible is literally speaking on hookups and one-night stands. And I love that. Like, God, when he wrote, because Proverbs, let's do some theology here really quick. Proverbs was written, so it probably was written around 500 BC, so 500 years before Christ came, and then now it's been 2023 years since Christ came. So that means this was written 2,523 years ago, and it is so applicable to the day. That's a reminder that the Bible is timeless, but I think it's so awesome and such a reminder to us that that is not the way that we're called to live. We're called to live a life of purity. Even if we've been dating somebody for a long time, even if we know the person, whatever, we try to justify the sin, even if we plan on getting married to them. I know that was a mindset I struggled with. That is not right. Like, you're not married to them until you actually are. And so that means it is not, finalized in heaven until, you actually committed to it, and stepped into that. So do not sell yourself short. And then 1 Corinthians 6:18 says, run from sexual sin. No other sin so clearly affects the body as this one does. For sexual immorality is a sin against your own body. So you're only hurting yourself, guys. And so I just want to remind you and encourage you guys that it's not worth it. It may feel good in the moment, but the lasting effects of it are not good. And that's the thing. It looks good in the moment. It feels good in the moment. We enjoy it in the moment. But then afterwards, we're guilty. We're shameful. Or maybe if it's not, it might be weeks, months later, years later, we're shameful. We're guilty. Don't sell yourself into that. Hold yourself to a high standard and realize that it's so much sweeter when you wait. And you can still, love your boyfriend or girlfriend well in this season, in this time. But it can look like that selfless, sacrificial love, not sin. Because sin is not love. Sin is a lie. So let's just remember that and walk in that. But I do want to hit on the fact that, if you have fallen into sexual sin, Jesus still loves you and he wants to forgive you. What you did is not okay, but because of what he did on the cross for you, it can be forgiven. And so I want you guys to be encouraged by my own testimony. I fell into the trap of sexual sin, but because of God's goodness and grace, he pulled me out of that muck and mire and he set me back on a righteous path and he cleansed me of that. And, he cleansed my sin, and through him and with him, I'm able to be as white as snow. And am I perfect? No. And is he cleansing me every day? Yes. But it was through him and repenting of my sins and seeking that forgiveness, I have been set free from that. And so that is available to you as well. Now, I also want to add, that doesn't mean we take advantage of that, and that doesn't mean we do whatever we want on Valentine's Day or any day and then seek forgiveness later. No, it means if we have messed up and we've fallen short, because that is what sin is, it's simply missing the mark and falling short of God's glorious standard for our life. When we come to the fact and realize that we did that, we're able to experience forgiveness and live it out. We definitely should not take advantage of God's grace because he's too good for that. So far, we got to learn that you're not less than in the season of single. Dating is not, or Valentine's Day is not a free pass to fall into sexual sin for people who are dating. If you have fallen into sexual sin, you can experience forgiveness. And then lastly, I want to hit on marriage. I was going to kind of hit on engagement, but I feel like, that can apply as well if you're being, engaged. The same point with dating. You should not be walking in sexual sin when you're engaged. It is not a time, Valentine's Day is not a free pass, and engagement is not a time of sin. It is still a time in which we should uphold the truth of Scripture, and that is walking in purity. But I do want to hit on marriage because I want to, talk about the fact that, like I said, sex is a gift and it is a good thing, but within the confinements of marriage. And, any day, if you're married, then it's a perfectly, fine day to have sex. But Valentine's Day is a day where a lot of times people, I know people do it before they're married, but we just talked about that. But people, when they're married, really make sure and make it a day to really go above and beyond for each other and really seek to love one another. And I just want to hit on 2 Bible verses with that, which is Proverbs 3:27. It says, do not withhold good from those who deserve it when it is in your power to act. And I'm going to connect it to 1 Corinthians 7 through, which says the husband should fulfill his wife's sexual needs and the wife should fulfill her husband's needs. The wife gives authority over her body to her husband, and the husband gives authority over his body to his wife. And so that's basically saying if you're married and you have the option or the opportunity to be able to serve your partner in love sexually, then do that. I once heard this saying before that the enemy is going to try to do everything he can to get you to have sex before marriage, and then he's going to try to do everything he can to keep you from having sex after marriage because he sees that it is a gift from God and it is good. But if you're married, do not let the enemy have the final say. Do not let him win. Use Valentine's Day or any day as a day to serve one another in that love sexually, but also remember that there is still, because I think it's so easy when we think like once we get married, it's all about sex. Like it's not. Remember that you still should outserve each other and love one another just in the way that you listen to them, the way that you forgive them, the way that you're patient with them, the way that you're thoughtful and you do kind things with them. So don't just use it as a day, if you're married, to outserve one another sexually, but also use it as a day to outserve each other, in all those areas. But don't just let Valentine's Day be a day to do that. And for all of you guys, living a life of love and living a life for Christ, I think Valentine's Day can just be a day where we really, get our mindset reset. We really get back on fire for it. It's a day where, there's so many opportunities. I think it's just like a good reset, good reminder. But we should live that way every single day. And so I hope that was able to encourage you guys in some way, shape, or form. And I really just want to hit on the fact, the biggest point through all of this is that if God's love was sacrificial and selfless, and we are using Valentine's Day to honor a martyr whose love was obviously selfless and sacrificial, then that means our life should be selfless and sacrificial, and our life should be a reflection of God's love. And so that means it's selfless and sacrificial. So whatever season you're in today, friends, whether you're single, dating, engaged, married, you have the opportunity to be able to go out and love others and serve others. You are not less than in any season that you are in. And so, overcome those lies, walk in the truth, and go and outserve one another in love. And by doing so, you're getting to go and be the light. And so for my 2 challenges for you, first thing is I want you guys to outserve someone in love. And that means go above and beyond. Maybe it's, going above and beyond with multiple people and choosing to find 10 people to compliment or something like that. Or 10 people to comment, a sweet thing on their post. Or calling 5 different friends today. Really do something above and beyond. Maybe it is a gift you give somebody. It's above and beyond. And that's kind of where the next thing ties in. Buy at least one person a Valentine's Day gift. And if you've already planning, if you're already dating somebody, and obviously that's a given, you're going to do it, find somebody that you can go out of your way to get them a Valentine's gift. A little teddy bear, chocolate. Do it for a parent. Do it for a friend. Do it for a teacher, a coworker, whatever it is. Outserve somebody in love today. Go big and beyond, extravagant with it, and buy a little Valentine's Day gift for somebody. And the best way, I think one of the best ways to be the light is just to live as Christ lived and let your life be a reflection of his love. So I hope that encouraged you guys in some way. Go out, be the light, make a difference, love people, and see all the great things that God is going to do. Have an amazing day, an amazing week, and an amazing Valentine's Day.